the City Council meeting of Monday, March 11th, 2019, 6 p.m. Roll call, please.
Dick Anderson?
Yes.
Judy Casper is excused. Hinton?
Here.
Hoagland?
Here.
Coos?
Here.
Mark?
Here.
And Parsons?
Here.
Thank you. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and
To the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all. There you go, Dick. It's going to be the midnight.
All right. Thank you all. We have a consent agenda this evening, a regular meeting minutes of January 28, 2019. And number 2 is minutes from the work session January 29th, 2019. I would ask council, when it comes to minutes and these kind of things, hopefully you've forwarded grammatical errors, corrections to clerk, and what we'd be looking for is any substantive type changes or misconceptions in the minutes. If none to pull, then I'd entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I move to approve the consent agenda that includes the minutes for regular meeting January 28th, 2019, and those minutes of a work session January 29th.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Hoagland seconded. We have a motion with a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed with a nay? Hearing none, thank you. Comments from the city citizens. Let me read comments, little preamble here. Article 1, Section 8 of the Oregon Constitution provides, no law shall be passed restraining the free expression of opinion or restricting the right to speak, write, or print freely on any subject whatever. But every person shall be responsible for the abuse of this right. Be advised, statements and comments by citizens under comments for citizens present or on public hearing or public comment items are solely the opinions and statements of the speaker and are not statements by the City of Lincoln City and do not represent the opinions of the city, its officers, or employees. And we have Mr. Mayor Don Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, City Council. As I was coming here, I was thinking, I'm almost ready to believe in climate change because it must be a cold day in hell since I came back here. Oh, that's not nice. That's not nice. I'm sorry. It was a bad joke. I tell bad jokes. I've talked to Mr. Apicello, and I kind of had everything covered already that I just didn't read in the ordinance. I want to talk just briefly about what you're going to talk about tonight with the carts and such, and I didn't know I'd have a chance to speak. It looks great to me. There's just a couple things that I wanted to throw out for you to think about. There was a question about the fee schedule, whether it would be a 10% of the gross revenue or a flat fee. I would prefer a flat fee. I think trying to gather revenue information from someone who's got their business on wheels is probably not going to be giving you the best information that you could get. I don't know how you possibly gather that after a weekend and they're gone. So that would be my point. We talked, Mr. Apicello and I just briefly talked about my ADA concerns. He alleviated many of those. That's going to be addressed because I was concerned about if a cart was allowed in a roadway, where does the counter height begin, and is it going to be from the road, is it going to be from the sidewalk? But apparently that's not going to be a concern. On the fee side, I would like to see things low enough to encourage but not low enough to subsidize. So if we're going to charge fees for people to have food carts, I like the idea of carts, but I want to make sure that they're not being subsidized by a lower fee than something that someone has a brick and mortar might be charged. I gave Kathy a copy of just some ADA concerns, and building code considerations for food carts from the city of Beaverton, and it's quite lengthy, and I think it's interesting to read, especially their fee schedule. And then things to start considering is, and I know it's coming up in planning, but the waste generation and not only solid but water and things like that. And then there was also in the ordinance, trying to keep my thoughts here, that they can apply for a site to go to, but it doesn't say how many sites they'd be allowed to apply for in any given time. So if it were me, I would apply for 5 and say, okay, I'm out here at 52nd and it's dead. I want to now go over here where it's moving and happening. Is that going to be something that we allowed to have multiple sites chosen by one person or company? Or would it just be, hey, here's your one for the weekend. This is where you're staying. And I would like them to keep mobile. I don't want to seem fixed. So it's not going to be here, you're going to put your skirt around it and just set up a place you're going to live. In places where food is not easily accessible and would be a benefit to the city to reduce traffic and breaks, I think it would be ideal placement for these kind of things. So when you have a big tournament going on, you don't want people just leaving the area in a mass exodus when they have a break in the action. It would be very beneficial to have some food there of some sort. I know the boosters do many things like that, but just something to think about down the road. Other than that, I apologize for the bad joke. Great to see you all again, and thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Don Forrest.
John Force, guess why I'm here. I'm the founder director of the Nell Scott Reef Big Wave Classic here in Lincoln City. The last time I spoke here warning the council of the dual permit fiasco created by Ron Chandler issuing a second permit to Gabe Smith, who was convicted of running an event last year without a special event permit, culminating in spectators almost getting killed by rolling logs on the city ramp. Last week, I informed the VCB that I will be running my event on Sunday the 10th, yesterday, and rented the porta potties and garbage cans and arranged for the traffic team that was required for traffic and parking issues at the park. 3 days before the event, Gabe Smith informed the city officials that he is running his event on Sunday and will pay the fine, considering we have $40,000 on the line and we are doing an actual webcast. You would think we would get priority. But whatever. John is not allowed to have both days, which is not true. As per permit, I have the following 3 days to complete the contest. So he needs to pick which one of these days he is going to run his itty-bitty garbage contest. I would rather pay a fine than return $40,000. Just a heads up. John Forrest will not ruin this for us. It's already in the works and happening no matter what he does. Gabe then sent out notices to his athletes and photographers that he is running his event on my contest day out of Canyon Park that had been allocated to me as per the permit. I sent an email to a lot of you and Richard Apicello informing of the situation and asking for a reply to the situation. He responded that any future communication would have to be through legal counsel. About 10 minutes later, I got a call from Richard Apicello telling me that despite the safety dangers I have outlined to the city previously, I should just run my contest and ignore Gabe's event. Is that how the city deals with conflict? Don't worry about safety, just go ahead. We have run safe events for 14 years and no one has been seriously hurt, and it didn't just happen. It was by design and planning and collaboration with North Lincoln Fire and Rescue and professional water safety personnel. So Ed Drystat and the VCB gave Gabe my permits to run his event and hope no one gets killed. All the reports I have heard that I have video confirmation that Gabe had no traffic control or parking monitors as required by my permit, and his spectators trespassed on private property at the top of Canyon Drive that had been posted. Additionally, I have a copy of Gabe's permit and insurance, and his insurance is listed as valid March 31st, 2019 to April 1st, 2019. How does that work? All of this could have been avoided if councilors had directed Ron Chandler to invoke section 5.16.080 of the special event codes and revoke both of the permits it issued. 5.16.1080 permits the city to do so if it makes the following finding. A, if the patrons of a special event have become a disorderly or riotous assembly whereby the public peace or the safety of persons or property are threatened. Luckily, nobody got hurt yesterday that I'm aware of in the water, and despite the absence of traffic and parking monitors as required for permit, no wrecks. Apparently, although the surf was undersized for a big wave event and the wind blew it out by 1 p.m., no casualties were reported. As far as the promised feature of a $40,000 webcast, there was none. And I'm sure there are a string of disgruntled sponsors who were cheated, much like Councilor Coos was when she worked for Lincoln City Mall and other local sponsors. I am asking the city to fix their side of the problem so this doesn't happen again. But for now, I told you so. Thank you.
Thank you for coming forward. Anyone else who didn't have the opportunity to sign up? Want to make a comment? Mr. Roloff?
Jay Roloff, Lincoln City resident. I noticed on the agenda that item K, 17 is an application for recognition as a representative news media for Justin Werner. I am an activist, as you know. I look for information on the internet all the time. NewsGuard is a staple for me for local news, and so is Lincoln City homepage. I would tell you that I have used them for years now, and I look to them as a local source of information that I can depend on. So from my perspective, I'm very hopeful that he will be deemed a member of the press, just as Jeremy is. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else that didn't get the opportunity to come forward? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to presentations. And Ms. French, I'm betting it's you that are going to come forward for solid waste.
Full disclosure. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and ladies and gentlemen of the council. First thing I want to do is say thank you to you guys. I appreciate you stepping forward and running, and I know the pay isn't great, and but I appreciate your leadership and your time. I know it's a lot of work. In full disclosure, I am not here as the solid waste district tonight. Judy Casper has been great enough to become involved in the solid waste district, and she wasn't able to be here tonight, but I agreed to come and speak to the new counselors and just show you my face. I think all of you know me, but and to give you an update on the last year, because as hopefully all of you know, we've been through kind of a crazy year and a half now, and so I just wanted to give an update. Oh, you don't? Sorry. I'm sorry. Oh, it's quick. And I'm a really good filler of time. So the two things I wanted to talk to you about tonight are, one of them is an update that none of you may have heard of, and that is the asbestos rule changes that we had pretty much crammed down our throat, for lack of a better term, in September. And we got a call from our landfill in September that said, we noticed there was some construction and demolition in your load that you delivered to the landfill today. And we said, well, yes, we get that periodically. And they said, well, where's your asbestos forms for that? And we said, well, that rule hasn't fully been passed yet by the DEQ. We've been waiting. We've actually had been waiting for over 2 years for rules to be finalized through DEQ. And the landfill said, well, regardless, you have to have all of those forms for any load containing C and D, which is construction and demolition material. And we said, all right. And so we, in less than 30 days, came up with our asbestos abatement, and I'm losing the term for the form right now that you have to fill out at the transfer station. So basically, anything built prior to 2004, you have to have an asbestos survey, there's the word I'm looking for, done by a certified surveyor. And we are fortunate enough to have a couple of those in Lincoln City. At the time, we did not. And I was calling all over to anybody I knew that might be interested of, here's a business opportunity for you because we need people to be able to do this. The local service master franchise does do it, and that's who I've personally used since this went into effect. And they did a great job. Thank you, Kathy. So you have to have the survey done. If you have asbestos found in your survey, then you have to have it abated. And our company took it a step further because we wanted to be an answer when people showed up at the transfer station, instead of saying, that's asbestos, we can't take it, and sending them down the road to who knows where it would go. We wanted to train our employees and have a dedicated place where we could accept small quantities of asbestos. So we have been working on our permit at our transfer station for about the last 6 months, well, not about, the last 6 months, with the DEQ to update our permit to be able to do that. We have trained all of our significant employees that would ever be able to help with that. We've ordered the sealed drop boxes to be able to contain that. You have to get these fancy burrito wrap things. And anyhow, so we just got word from the DEQ today that they have received our latest update of our permit, and it sounds like they are sending it back. So we should be able to get that up and going here, I'm hoping, in the next month. That sounds like a long time, but the way that the back and forth goes with DEQ, it's really not. So that is the asbestos update. It is expensive, I'm not going to lie, but we have to do it. And I really appreciate the cooperation in the Lincoln City Planning Department. That was one of the first places we came, because Lincoln City, we are fortunate enough to have a demolition permit here. And so if you want to demolish something in the city, you have to come and fill out a permit that says what you're demolishing, where you're going to take it. If somebody else is demolishing, where are they going to take it? And now all the information about surveys is in that permit. And the city was really proactive on that, and we appreciate that. We're trying to get Lincoln County on board with that. They do not have a demolition permit. In fact, I think Lincoln City is the only city in the county that has a demolition permit. So I'm thankful for that. And I think it's better for our community and our citizens to be aware of it up front rather than showing up to the transfer station with it. Here she goes. I'm glad it's you. With that being said, is there any questions on asbestos, and then we can just chat about recycling for a few minutes?
Mr. Mayor.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Here we go.
Ms. French, hi. Thanks for another presentation. How many asbestos, how do you say it?
Abatements?
Asbestos abatements.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Say that 10 times fast.
Yeah, I know. How many of those have you actually had now that the program is in place?
You know, we do not do the abatements. So
How much asbestos contaminated material have you taken?
we don't take any contaminated material. The abatement company takes care of that. So if you are an asbestos abatement company, you prepare it correctly, and then generally they haul it to an approved landfill, which Hillsborough is the closest. Coffin Butte will take it, but they take it in very, their minimum is a very large quantity. That's where we will take it once we start collecting it in the box. So if you as a homeowner, you can do your own asbestos abatement as a homeowner, and you can get on DEQ's website and learn all about it. And then there's a list of surveyors on their website. We provide that on our website as well, and the abatement contractors. Our goal is to be able to take, let's say you wanted to remodel your bathroom this weekend and you had asbestos tile, and you knew how to abate it, triple bag it, wet it, blah, blah, blah. Use your personal protective equipment, and you brought us a 32-gallon bag of tile. We would be able to handle that for you as soon as we get this permit back from DEQ. But as far as how many abatements have been done, I had one done on my parents' house bathroom, and it took less than a week. From the time I had the survey till the time it was stripped down to the studs, and I was ready to go on my project.
When do you anticipate having the certification?
I'm hoping to, we literally just got off the phone with DEQ this afternoon. They said that they accepted all of the changes to the permit, and so I'm thinking it should take less than 4 weeks to get that back.
And then how many other sanitation services are currently taking that? Small
None.
batch?
None. We will be the only one in the county. Thompson Sanitary and Dahl Disposal have both declined to do that.
Thank you.
And they have joked that they'll bring it to us. but-
Sure.
All right, so here we go. So since I was here in June of last year, I wanted to give you some updates on recycling because hopefully all of you know we had to reduce the amount of recycling we could accept in our roadside commingled material, and we put out a full court press on contamination. And so we were curious what that did to our volumes, and so here's the data. Total commingled recycled tons collected. In 2017, we collected 1,378 tons of commingled material. 2018, 1,123, which is almost a 20% decrease of just the commingled. The total cost per ton went from $79 a ton in 2017 to $170 per ton in 2018, 115% increase from 2017, which most of you probably remember the large rate increase to cover that. We rebranded everything, all of our education material, our website, everything that we've ever had in print, anything to do with recycling, we redid it. And this is probably my favorite thing that we came up with because it covers everything. On the blue side is everything that can go into your recycled roll cart. On the green side are things that you can bring into the recycling center. The top are free drop-off items, and then the bottom is items that you can drop off for a charge.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Ms. French, if I may, I know there's been some confusion, and I see that it's blue and green, right? And one is you can pay for it, and then the top half is free, but it's also above what you have to pay. And so I know that there's been a lot of people who have been confused with the free items that you can drop off for free,
Okay.
thinking that there's a charge there
Okay.
in that thing. And
Because of this material or just a general?
and this,
That's
maybe if
the.
there was like a line across,
Sure.
just to say, hey, this stuff is free.
Yeah, and we've talked about like highlighting items on our reader board. People read that, and it's I think us and Galucci's are the way you find out about things in Lincoln City.
The gas station near you says something, not all wonder who are lost.
That's true.
So that's a good one.
Anyhow, we've talked about highlighting some of those things because I do agree for sure that people think that we do still charge for cardboard and glass.
Absolutely.
So that's a great point. We need to do a better job at.
It's free.
Yeah.
It's free.
Yeah, so we can put that up on the marquee starting tomorrow and just kind of highlight all those things. The biggest focus that we have been working on in the last 18 months is contamination reduction. And ironically, it coincided with DEQ came out with their 2050 plan, and one of the line items in that plan was contamination education. And so this melded in quite nicely. I would say that our company has been extremely aggressive on our contamination education. I sit on several different committees and boards throughout the state, and so I hear what all sorts of communities and different companies are doing. And so far I haven't talked to anybody that has gone above and beyond what we've done. Immediately we hired an individual who now works for the city to help go out on our routes and just start flipping lids to see what's in there, because the route driver is trying to drive a truck and get his route done and didn't have time to do that. So we sent an individual out ahead of him and to flip lids and to hopefully interact with people, talk to people if they were there, but if not, leave them a note to let them know what we found in their recycling and why it's not recyclable. We hired somebody to be in our recycling center. I don't know if you recall, but we didn't used to have a full-time manned person actually in the drop-off area. Eder has been with us for years and has been great, but his main job is to bale cardboard, and so he wasn't always up above where people were dropping off recycling. So we hired a full-time attendant to be in the recycling center for about 6 months just to educate people. And then on March 1st of 2018, we started charging. So we gave people about 120 days notice, had that person in there and informed them. During that time, we found out that a large majority of the people that were dropping off recycling in our recycling center were from Tillamook County. So they were not contributing to the rate that we all pay, and they were getting a service that they weren't contributing to. And so that was one of the big reasons why we decided we needed to start charging for recycling, because if you live in Lincoln City, you get it with your service. So you have an opportunity to recycle that's not an extra fee. And we definitely wanted to capture that out-of-county income. We still, every day the drivers, all of our routes are automated and on tablets, and every truck has several cameras on it, so we are able to take pictures from the cab to the curb, from the hopper that the can dumps into, and then just if we flip a lid and it's grossly contaminated, we can take a picture of it there. So we can see it at different levels. And the driver identifies those, the customer gets a letter. We can email them the pictures if they don't believe us, which does happen. And we have a 3 strikes and you're out program. So the first letter says, please don't do that. The second letter says, please don't do that. The third letter says, we're sorry you don't get it. We're pulling your can. And you can come into our office and take a test on what is recyclable and what's not recyclable and get your roll cart back. And people do that sometimes. Most of the time, the people that get their cans pulled for contamination are using it as an extra garbage can. So they're not interested in coming in and taking a test. We got into the social media world, which we need to improve on. And I knew this going into it, that if you don't stay on it daily, it becomes stagnant. And so we have actually a meeting tomorrow to start making a renewed effort to keep that updated on a daily to weekly basis. We're continuing to work with local government and community leaders on education with an emphasis on reduce and reuse, which I know that Ron came up with a program almost a year ago. And so we have, I think there's a group that is meeting or has met, a community group. And then we have been working on things internally as well as with the Solid Waste District on how to emphasize reducing and reusing. We talked about asbestos. So what's next? I like to think that every time that we have a big problem, that generally presents some good things. And I would say, excuse me, the good things have been the contamination reduction. We knew we had contamination in our recycling somewhere around 10%. Come to find out it was more like 30%. And that's a statewide number, that's not Lincoln City. And I think it's really important that the things that we put in our recycle roll carts are recyclables, and that we are not sending our garbage to no longer China, but now we're sending it to India and Vietnam and Indonesia. And if we're just moving it around the globe, I don't think that's a good idea. So I want to make sure that what's in our recycling is recyclable, and if we're telling our customers we're recycling it, that we really are. So we want to make sure they're high valued products. I think that's a great thing. The other thing that you start looking at is what is the low-hanging fruit. If we've lost tonnages in the commingle stream, where can we gain tonnages? And the low-hanging fruit is yard debris and composting. Statewide numbers, it's about 40% by weight of your garbage can. And so that is the low-hanging fruit if you're looking to increase your recovered tons. And by recovered tons, I mean moving tons from the garbage can somewhere else other than the landfill. Bag ban. I've sat through 2 meetings now at the county talking about Newport's bag ban. And I'm not going to tell you that I don't have a personal opinion on it. I'm just going to say that I want to make sure that everybody understands the environmental impacts of banning plastic bags if you move to paper. And it's not good. You have to reuse a paper bag 5 to 7 times to equal the environmental impact of using a plastic bag once. You have to use a reusable shopping bag 130 to 150 times to equal the environmental impact of 1 plastic bag. If we have a litter problem, maybe. If we do, let's address that. And so I know it's coming. It's kind of like, we'll do VRD first, you guys do bag ban first, and then we'll switch. And so I see that happening. I'm sure you know it's happening. And that's kind of the joke around the table at the county. One thing I'm really excited about is the Solid Waste District has funds. And so I said, why don't you partner with us and let's start a film plastic recycling program? And I think you've heard me sit here before and say film plastic is a high value commodity. The problem with film plastic is keeping it source separated, keeping it clean, and keeping it dry once it's baled. Diane can attest, we had a really successful film plastic recycling program at the mall. We collected it, we baled it, and we hauled it. We lost the ability to haul that single bale like what we did when we had the program with the mall, but we've been in contact with Trex, who is the ultimate market for that, and that's who makes lumber and benches. And they will take it from us. In fact, they will pay us for it if we have enough of it and if it stays dry. Well, I don't have a building to collect it, and I don't have the volumes. 40 bales of material, that 40-yard dumpster that we barely made a bale. And how long did it take you guys to fill that up?
Quite a while.
So it takes a while, but if we had a county-wide program and we could bring it together centrally located, it would be a terrific program. And Mark Salins with the Solid Waste District said, I love the idea, let's talk about it next month. So we're going to do a little more research on that and see if we could get some funds to build a building, help pay for, some of the labor to do that. And then the reduce reuse campaign. I don't want that to go away, and I want to keep brainstorming ideas on how to do that, and just help get that information out there to people. And that's kind of goes back to our social media. That's one of the things we've highlighted for that, of contamination, but also reducing and reusing. That's all I have. I went over my 10 minutes.
Questions from council? Councilor Mark?
Thanks for coming, Tina. It was really interesting. On the film recycling, I'm happy to make a separate trip over to your place and drop off glass. It would be so easy if there was just a bin. I mean, we hate throwing away our plastic right
I know.
now. So I'm wondering.
So that's what it would be. I mean, hopefully you used our film plastic recycling when we did have it, and we just had a bin in the recycling center, and that's what we would hope, is that when people are dropping off their glass or cardboard, that they would just bring in their big bag of bags. And it's not just bags. There's a lot of film plastic. That's the other thing about banning the bag, is that's a very small percentage of the film plastic that we have. Everything that is wrapped in plastic is film plastic.
On the, I had it there. Why are the paper bags worse? Paper bags are, I mean, if I'm putting garbage in my paper bag and instead of a plastic bag, I know that paper bag's going to biodegrade in the landfill.
Yes, and create methane.
Which they capture, don't they?
Some of it. But there's lots of information online, and basically it's the life cycle analysis of cutting down the tree to market to get to the craft paper. And the problem is that scrap paper recycle programs are really in danger right now. If we lose another commodity, it's going to be scrap paper. And there's a lot of communities around the state already that do not collect scrap paper. So even if it is a recyclable, it still is not the environmentally life cycle analysis, whole picture of, carbon in, carbon out. But if we lose the ability to recycle it, then we've really, you're really upside down in that.
You said you had a 19% decrease in commingle recycling. Did you have a 19% increase in tonnage of garbage?
No. And we've had some growth, and I don't like to figure Dropbox tonnages into when you're trying to compare apples and apples, because people aren't throwing their recyclables.
You're not counting the commingle at the transfer station or at your office.
Yes, we are.
You are counting
Yes, yeah. Commingle, we do not separate en route from the recycling center.
Okay.
That's a really difficult thing to do.
Right.
But we also, when I try to compare the numbers that you'll see from me when I come back for our actual rate review in a few months, is complete garbage tonnages versus complete recycled tonnages, and that includes Dropbox.
And you have not seen a 19% increase in garbage tonnage?
No, we have not seen a 19% increase overall, but definitely not when you back drop boxes out of that. And by the way, we send a monthly
report.
It's everything you would ever want to know. Broke out, put together, broke out again. And Judy asked me to send that to her last month, and we did, but I don't know. Do you want to share that with them, or do you want me to? I'm happy to do it either way.
Actually, I added one feature to it that makes it, for me, a little bit more helpful than Adele. It already is, and it is very helpful. And that is, for me, to really measure, you have to compare yourself against, over time, per capita. So we have plugged in the per capita numbers so that we can see the trends of what we're doing per capita. And so
That's a great
I'll send
idea.
that to you. Yeah.
Do you mind sending me that and maybe a little collaboration there? That would be great, because that's a good idea.
Counselor?
Me?
Yes.
Or Mark?
No, Mr. Hoagland.
Oh, okay. And about that, whenever the time comes to talk to you about what the city would like as far as like curbside composting and things like that, when does that discussion need to happen? Because the last time you were here, it was too late. So when would that time?
That discussion can happen at any time. Those programs take a long time to roll out.
Right.
But if that's something that you want to talk about at a council, that would, I would recommend that you talk about it. How does that work, Ron, when you give staff reports or recommendations to your council? How would you want that conversation to happen?
In this case, probably the best, well, depends on the extent of what you really want to do. If you really want to have an in-depth conversation, it's best to do it in a work meeting,
okay,
where you really have a more free-flowing.
I just don't want to be another 2 years out before a contract comes up, and then we're not able to do that.
Sure. And if you, I 100% invite any one of you to come and talk to me anytime about, and I can, we can talk about film plastic, composting, but if you want to have a more serious conversation at a council level, I would probably go through Ron to do that.
Well, of course, but
Yeah.
right. But the last time you were here, we were trying to talk about it, and it was too late. So I don't want it to be too late another 2 years.
Okay. I'm
Because you're bound to the contract that you have with the city to do.
Sure.
So
Yep. And to add a program like that, like if we were sitting here tonight and I was presenting to you, we would look at rolling that out in 2020.
Right. That's what
So,
I'm saying. I don't want it to
right.
be 2022.
Gotcha.
Right.
Counselor Mark?
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I could use a little more background on that. So there was a time when you collected compost separately and then
No,
stopped?
we have never. So,
Okay.
a little bit of history. We have a wood waste collection program at Schooner Creek Transfer Station. In May of 2015, when Georgia Pacific shut down their hog fuel program to fire their burners and went to natural gas, we lost a lot of what we could accept in that program. And where we had to start hauling that material would only accept an actual wood chip. So we were no longer allowed to accept any green waste, lawn clippings, leaves, any of that. We are in the process of finding a new contract to haul that material where we could start accepting that material again as a drop-off. But the only thing we've ever done at the curbside is woody debris boxes. So you could get a 1.5-yard container if you had a big clipping job, or even a 10-yard, 20-yard drop box if you had a big landscape job. And then that material would get recycled. But we've never actually done a curbside program like we do recycling.
Councilperson, you okay? All right. Tina, 2 questions or comments. One, could you remind us all when your free curbside
Oh,
pickup-
yeah. City cleanup.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, darn, I left my phone. It is the weekend of Easter. It starts that Tuesday after the citywide garage sale. I believe it's April 23rd, if anybody has a calendar in front of them.
Well, there'll be more coming up, but it's,
Yes, and the only thing we had to change this year is construction and demolition material because of the asbestos rules. We will not be able to accept that material at the curb because we don't know, and we don't want to put city employees or our employees at risk for that. But everything else is the same, up to 4 yards of material. Sign up starting April 1st. And there'll be stuff on the bills. The city puts stuff on the water bills. It'll be in the paper.
great. Just wanted people to
Thank
start
you for the
thinking about
reminder.
it. The other is, so it's a question, you've not run into anybody who's looking at starting a business to better utilize the plastics that are now being trashed?
Yes and no.
Okay.
I have had the pleasure of listening to presentations of people that have great ideas. And I watched a 60 Minutes video about a young man out of Stanford that did the big ocean barge cleanup thing and had great ideas for what he was going to do with that. And I actually saw it parked in Hawaii. It's broken. But anyhow, that's the other neat thing is anytime there is something like this that comes up, the ingenuitive people that we are, stuff comes up. There is nothing right now that's happening. I will say one piece of good news, not with plastic, but with scrap paper. Scrap paper has been the big monster in the room that's been looming over us ever since this started of, we don't know if we're going to be able to take it. We don't know if we're going to be able to take it. We don't know if we have a market. And so far, so good. But we just got word yesterday from our processor that a domestic mill is opening up in Ohio, which is a long ways away, but it's closer than China. And so that's really good news. We have heard rumors of 2 to 5 mills opening up and retooling. I know one in Longview, Washington is actually, they had downsized and they're actually going back to their original capacity for cardboard. We're really fortunate we have GP in our backyard, so that doesn't really affect us. But it does on the nationwide market, and it's a worldwide market, it's not nationwide.
Great.
Just without naming names, there is a bit of a battle at my homestead to sort out things that are, contaminated goods. I'm always putting the pizza box from the recycling into the
Good job.
into the garbage. So I'm encouraging just continued education. I think it would be helpful, maybe a letter now and then or something
Great.
to remind people.
And we struggle with the newsletter thing, and I don't know how you guys feel about that, but I felt really hypocritical sending out 15,000 pieces of paper every month with a reduce your garbage message on it. It was like, this is, so we send out a lot of them by email. I would really encourage you and everybody listening, if you don't get your bill by email already, do it. And then we can send you a newsletter.
The city does incentive with a 50 cents off, so, you might think of that as well.
We did a campaign where we gave away like an iPod when we first started it, and anybody that signed up for email billing got entered in, and we did that quarterly for a while, and we got thousands of people to do it, so maybe we should do that again.
Just not an iPod.
Pardon me?
It's not an iPod.
Well, yeah, that dates me, doesn't it?
Thank you, Tina.
All right, thank you very much.
Good job. All right.
Thank you.
Okay, council, next item is ordinances. We have ordinance number 2019-07. Staff.
Your Honor, Counsel, this is first reading of ordinance 2019-07, an ordinance of the City of Lincoln City amending the Lincoln City Municipal Code, Title V, Business Taxes, Licenses, and Regulations, Chapter 5.28, Street Vendors, adding a new Section 5.28005, Applicability, amending Section 5.2810, Definitions, adding a new Section 5.28025, Exemptions, amending Section 5.28030, Insurance, amending Section 5.28070, Areas for Street Vending, and amending Section 5.28080, Method of Operation. By way of a staff report, this ordinance is brought with 3 other ordinances, 2 of which are on this agenda and 1 will be coming on the next agenda. And the ordinance, in part, is to clarify the division of responsibilities between the Planning Department in issuing street vendor licenses, the Parks Department in approving concession agreements with vendors pursuant to an exclusive use permit, and the special event ordinance by Explorer Lincoln City, where vendors sometimes operate under a special event permit. And also, as part of this, bad actors sometimes cause us to look at our ordinances. And so if someone plops down in the middle of a park or a right-of-way or an area that's being used as a park and blocks access, this is the kind of attention we have. And so one of the things that's throughout these ordinances that's going to be addressed is we want the ADA coordinator to look at the proposed locations to make sure that these areas are not interfering with pedestrian or vehicular access, or and that they comply with ADA accessibility. One of the things we're doing is the street vendors ordinance, unlike the parks concession, does not have any concession payable to the city. So there are people basically using public property with no charge. So to be consistent with the parks ordinance, the 10% concession is installed in this ordinance as well. And because it had not been previously in the ordinance, I'd ask that after I finish my staff report, you ask if there's any public comment on the 10%. Now there's an option in the ordinance to establish a flat rate, and that flat rate would be by fee resolution, and you'd go through the normal public comment process. But because the ordinance will, at least in the first instance, say 10%, I'd ask that you ask for comment on that now. We did basically exclude street vendors from parks, and basically tell them if you want to operate in a park, you have to go to see the parks director and get a exclusive use permit and a parks concession agreement. You don't have to have a street vendor's license if you are a vendor in a park. You don't have to have a street vendor's license if you are a vendor in a special event. Of course, you can have both. If you want to be a street vendor sometimes and also locate in parks, you can go talk to them. But we tried to separate that between the departments so that there was clarity. We updated things like the insurance under the Oregon Tort Claims Act. All 3 ordinances that are on the agenda tonight try to bring that up to the current standard. The Public Works Department may in the future create a map and delineate where these food carts can be located. So they basically pre-approve locations that can say in this area pedestrians can pass and vehicles can pass and 2 wheelchairs can pass, and therefore you can have a cart in here. That'd be the way I'd prefer it be done, but at this point it'll be a case-by-case review. So with that, I'd ask that you call for public comment on the proposed 10% concession consistent with the parks concession, and then I'll be happy to proceed.
So at this time, is there anybody in the public realm that would like to make a comment regarding ordinance number 2019-07? Seeing and hearing none, if you'd proceed.
So I've conducted the first reading. If you don't have any questions for me, I'd ask for a motion approving first reading, and if it's unanimous, we'll move on to second.
Councilor
Mr. Mayor.
Hinton?
I just want to say that I think the flat fee, is this the time I can talk about that? The flat fee, I think, makes more sense than trying to chase around that, that was my note to myself, and then when Don Williams brought that up, then it,
I heard the same thing from Ed, cash
just-
business, trying to chase down what their actual revenue was, but we'll address that when we come forward with a free resolution.
and then I just have another question, which is something also that Don Williams brought up, was the waste and the water considerations, and that's included in the Beaverton example. I was just wondering if we have any,
Our ordinance does require them to pick up the garbage within a certain distance of their facility. It does not say that they have to have water available. It's just a 4x8 cart, but obviously they need to be located in a place where there's facilities.
yeah, I'm just thinking if there's any liquid at the end of the day, would rather not see that being poured down the storm drain, as an example, which I have personally seen in the past. But, so I just kind of worry about that. And I'm very interested in the future, if we could actually identify the areas where food carts could be pre-approved, rather than having staff have to relook at it every time.
I agree.
I can wait for that.
Other comments, questions? Councilor Parker?
Why do we specify non-motorized if we have a size that they can be?
Well, it's a 4x, well, that's what this ordinance regulated, was non-motorized carts, push carts. The issue of food trucks is something that the planning department is going to be bringing to you in a work session this week. So that's what the existing ordinance addressed, and we didn't want to.
My line of thought here was, now they have motorized assist carts that size. If I'm disabled, I can't push a cart like, say, D-Dogs has now. So that might be limiting some people's ability to have a cart. And then second, in Part C, under the method of operation, it says, no push cart or vendor table shall be left unattended, but we don't specify how long's unattended.
Yeah, I think it's just not supposed to be unattended
Okay,
at
so-
all. I believe that if we would make an accommodation, if in fact we had an application by a disabled person, I don't know that we need to spell it out in the ordinance. I hate to see an exception for a good purpose abused.
Right.
Yeah. But I think we would handle that through the exception process.
Awesome.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I'm just, this is just, again, for my own education on the process, is if the recommendation is that we get a public comment on the proposed 10% fee, is it adequate just to say who happens, just ask the audience that happens to be here, or do we need to put out notice publicly and give people a chance to respond?
It's not an advertised public hearing, but 294-160 in Oregon statutes requires that if you create a new fee or increase an existing fee, you have to allow for public comment. So it has been on the agenda. It's in the ordinance. I did point out in the council communication that it was previously not in the ordinance, so I think that's sufficient for purposes of 294-160.
And if you do amend this to go to a flat fee, then there would be a notice
Yeah, well-
of the fee schedule. So if it comes to that, there'd be again. Okay. If maybe somebody can help me. I didn't see it, but when you were going through the list of permits and stuff, did I overlook the occupancy tax? Was that so stated in the? I just didn't remember seeing.
Several of them.
Pardon?
It's in several.
Oh, is it? Okay,
of them
good. I
that
just
they've
maybe
added that they have to have them.
have that. That's what I want to make sure. It was a good reminder that.
I even went and looked them up.
Okay. Good.
I wanted to know what it was. And how much was it
I
gonna
think it's
cost?
in there, but
I must have blasted.
I don't know which one it was.
Okay.
but
Well, it's possible it's not in this one, and it's in the other ones, but obviously that's one of the things that we review for.
Yeah, I like the idea of the way you were handling it, of reminding people what permits they would need, and I was just so we talked about a number of things. I guess would be a way in your motion to amend if you had suggestions that could be corrected for the second reading, so included in your motion would be appropriate, Mr. Apicella. Would that be, you'd be able to capture that?
If you have something specific, now, I don't really want to delay this, but we do have the fourth ordinance on the agenda for the May 25th. So if you didn't want to have the second reading today, if you gave me sufficient instruction, I could do it. And Ron's like, no, we've got too many.
March 25th.
March 25th. Yeah, I don't know what year it is. If you have something specific you want to address, I mean.
All right.
Flat
Any other questions?
The
Come.
flat fee.
So certainly to,
Well, the flat fee is in as an option, and that comes back as a resolution, so it doesn't have to, it's already provided here.
okay, so that would be taken care of. And the handling of wastewater was Councilor Hinton brought that up. Any sense, I think, her argument of not dumping down the nearest storm?
Right. You don't want to do that.
Yes. Straight to the salmon.
Hey, feed them.
So should she include that in a motion, or is there a way?
Well, let me
You can
just-
handle it?
well, I have to read something, so.
Oh, okay.
So if we're talking about adding something to address the proper disposal of wastewater, we have in section D a requirement that street vendors pick up any paper, cardboard, wood, plastic wrappers, blah, 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 within 25 feet of the push cart or table, and shall be responsible for proper disposal of the same. So I could add a sentence there that says, wastewater shall be properly disposed of, which does not include dumping in the storm drain.
That'd be good.
I think Counselor Parsons added something, I don't know if,
I was going to say, or the ground, don't dump it on the ground either, if you're not going to dump it in the storm drains.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
is the 50 feet is that a standard distance? I worry that it will eliminate a lot of the areas that,
The customer entrance one, the next section, is that what we're talking about? That's just in the existing ordinance. That's been around for quite a while. I
understand.
Your concern there, Councilor?
That it's very limiting as to where they could operate. And then, that's all. If we're trying to encourage or not encourage, I think 50 or 25 would make a big difference. And just looking to see if that's a standard distance. If we're looking at this ordinance in whole, I know that's not one of the underlined or stricken items, but if we're just talking about it, are we trying to encourage it as a city, or are we trying to limit them as the city? And I think that's a very critical point. I know we have to follow ADA compliancy, and hopefully this will allow, there'll be an overlay where they could be for ADA compliancy. Now we have now there's a 50-foot compliancy as well. So where, simply on that, I think that would be more limiting than an ADA compliant overlay. So I'm asking, is 50 feet the standard? I understand it's been what it was, and I'm not concerned with that. So
I'm reading 25, so where are you?
garbage is 25, 50.
Okay. Sorry. Okay, thank you.
And I understand from a business owner's point of view, don't steal my customers. I get it. But what are we trying to do here?
Mr. Apichello, if, given the Planning Commission's work session and figure they may make some modifications to carts and trucks, would any of their recommendations, hypothetically, as they come through an ordinance, then retro into these ordinances? I'm just wondering if we could hold it what's there for now, and knowing that the Planning Commission is looking at a bigger picture with these.
Is this based off of theirs, or is theirs going to change this?
No,
Right.
I actually think that the 50-foot issue is more about the map issue. If we had a map showing where there's sufficient right-of-way to locate a 4x8 food cart, I don't imagine it makes, there's not going to be a lot of areas like that. So I think that's going to override concerns like, I don't want this too close to my restaurant. So I do think we will want to have flexibility. I don't know if you want to do it now, or if you want to, you could reduce it to 25 now, with the idea that gives more leeway to come back with a map. But nobody can set up right in front of a restaurant. It has to be in an approved location that's got the ADA width and the access. So,
Sure, but I mean, for instance, I'm not going to sell hot dogs in front of Kylo's, but I may want to sell stuff to go to the beach, right? But if I can't do that within 50 feet of it, I can't do it at all. So that would limit where I can be. That's more what I'm talking about.
yeah, I agree.
Okay.
And again, the more important consideration, I think, yes, we don't want to put, brick and mortar businesses out of business by letting people populate all around them, but we want carts to be located in areas where there's sufficient space.
Sure, and then not everything's going to be a cart. It could be simply a table or a person holding stuff for sale. I think that there's this could mean a lot more. We're talking street vendors. We're not saying simply this is your cart on the sidewalk. If I can demonstrate I can sell goods with a 2x12 plank on some pegs, I mean, that is something else.
And if I can, Joe Glenn, that's exactly the discussion that I think needs more in depth, and that's what I'm thinking I thought anyway, the work session and anything that comes out of Planning Commission would take, because you're talking about balancing, trying to find a balance between the brick and mortar and carts or tables or anything else. Street vendors, and I'd rather have the work session where they can get into it rather than us making it a quick note.
Absolutely, and I don't want this to become solid to prevent something else over here.
Councilor Parsons?
Yeah, I was just going to add, the spot that you're talking about with the 50 feet, it specifies a vendor who serves food shall not occupy within 50 feet. So if you're selling beach stuff, that wouldn't seem to apply there.
Is that true, Mr. Apichello?
According to that.
Lost it.
That's on G, packet page 25,
Yep.
line 30.
Yeah, it says who serves food.
Shall occupy the area, it doesn't say.
So you can't, so then you could be a vendor in front of other businesses without any kind of foot distance.
No, this basically is telling you if you want a 4x8 food cart and you're selling food, you can't be within 50 feet of a restaurant entrance. But if you are selling beach stuff,
On a stick, I can stand out in front of wherever.
well, what I
just
think
saying, I'm just
what we're gearing this toward is some table or cart, and if in fact you want to sell beach supplies, towels and buckets, and every year the grandchildren buy them and
Right.
pile up, then you can do that, and it doesn't have to be 50 feet away from the entrance of a restaurant. So,
And to help brick and mortar businesses that sell items for the beach, what protection do they have that somebody who's going to sell Frisbees for 10 cents in front of their place are going to out the customers coming in for Frisbees for $5?
They don't.
Okay.
What they have is the assurance that we're not going to be allowing any 4x8 carts in areas that don't meet ADA accessibility, and there are not going to be too many of those.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I just have a question, which is, push carts were in the original ordinance, and then we've added table, and I'm wondering why. I'm not sure I agree with, I understand the push carts, and that makes perfect sense. The tables, to me, are a whole nother everything.
It just has to be something that's portable. And so planning staff basically asked me if I could specify table, because people have actually used tables, and they don't have wheels on them. But they're just as portable, and they come in, they put them up, and they take them down, just like they would wheel them away as a push cart, so.
I'm just having a little bit of trouble with that, because I understand push carts, and that could be somebody's business, and, you know, but a table, you could just, I mean, it doesn't seem like the same thing to me.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I think lemonade stands.
Lemonade
I
stand.
know, but it's not going to be lemon, I mean.
Yeah.
I
Well, it's
don't.
also like at farmer's market, they use, at the farmer's market, they use just tables.
But that's in a confined space, or an area that's designated for 5 tables here, 10 tables there. This isn't. This is willy-nilly as permitted by the planning department. And I don't know. It just doesn't seem like the same thing to me. That's all.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that the mayor's point about the OTP, I can't find it it may be in another section of the ordinance that I'm not amending, so I think we should add to perhaps paragraph A, street vendors shall obtain an OTP pursuant to,
On this one.
yeah, chapter 3, what is it?
Or section 6?
Section 6.
Yeah, 528.080, method of operation,
Okay.
yeah. Yeah, I should know this. The OTP is 504, I'm sorry. So there would be 2 additions. One would be in under A, the second sentence that says street vendors shall obtain an OTP pursuant to Chapter 504. And the second addition is wastewater shall be properly disposed of, which does not include disposal in the storm drain or on the ground. Generally, we don't write ordinances at the meeting, but I understand. Things come up, so.
And you made note of the consensus for the flat fee in the,
Yes, and Ed had pushed
Okay.
for that, and I'm sure he's very happy where,
all right.
yeah, he's got thumbs up, so.
Okay. So entertain a motion for first reading.
With the changes that as read.
So again, I'd entertain a motion.
I don't remember, yeah. Was she writing it all down?
Oh, no, you don't have to, all you do as changes, no, just,
With changes as
just
read.
the changes as.
Changes as read.
Yep,
I'll do it.
okay.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve first reading of ordinance 2019-7 with changes as read.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Parsons seconded. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Anderson,
Yes.
Hinton,
Yes.
Hoagland.
Yes.
Coos,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
and Parsons.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Great.
Your Honor, Counsel, if you'd like, I'll proceed with second reading. This is second reading of ordinance 2019-07, an ordinance of the City of Lincoln City amending the Lincoln City Municipal Code, Title V, Business Taxes, Licenses, and Regulations, Chapter 528, Street Vendors, adding a new Section 528005, Applicability, amending Section 528010, Definitions, adding a new Section 528025, Exemptions, amending Section 528030 insurance, amending Section 528070 area for street vending, and amending Section 528080 method of operation. Ask for approval of second reading and adoption of the ordinance with the changes that were read previously.
Is there a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve second reading with changes, adopt ordinance 2019-07.
Second.
And we have a second from Councilor Hinton. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Anderson,
Yes.
Hinton,
Yes.
Hoagland.
Yes.
Coos,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
and Parsons.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much. Now ordinance number 2019-10.
Your Honor, Council, this is first reading of ordinance 2019-10, an ordinance of the City of Lincoln City amending the Lincoln City Municipal Code, Title V, Business Taxes, Licenses, and Regulations, Chapter 5.16, Special Events, amending Section 5.16025, Exempt Activities or Events, adding Section 516.040, Paragraph C, City Park and Facility Recreation Rental Rates, and amending Section 516.050, Permit Conditions. That didn't seem right. Okay, so by way of a staff report, this is related to the previous ordinance. We clarify that when you, well, the way it is now, the way it's been since 2014, if you engage in commercial activity in a city park, you have to pay a concession fee. That's in the ordinance. It's been there since 2014. It's 10%. If you're a not-for-profit organization, the ordinance actually provides that the city donates the 10% fee back to you. So if you want to operate a concession in the city park, you need an exclusive use permit to occupy the space, whether it's a concession stand or an area that's ADA accessible. And then you pay the concession fee to the city based on gross sales. We have the same language in this ordinance that we'll have a flat rate if the Parks Director brings that forward. So this ordinance concerns special events, and it makes it clear that special events that use parks have to pay the same fees and charges that a regular concession does. So if you're operating a concession stand for a baseball league, you got to pay a 10% concession fee, and if there's a special event there, the special event has to pay the same 10%. It doesn't get to use the park for free. The same thing is if we charge you a fee to use the concession stand. You know, this is how much it costs to rent the concession stand, or this is how much it costs to rent the gazebo. If you get a special event permit, you have to pay that same fee or charge that someone who wants an exclusive use permit from the Parks Director has to pay. So we brought that together, and again, because that maybe wasn't as explicit as it needed to be in the special event ordinance, we'll ask again for public comments. But again, these fees and charges as they relates to parks, they already exist. But in an abundance of caution, I just asked for public comment. We added a little bit in the criteria for approval of special events. We talk about, you know, you make the application for a special event, it gets routed to all the department heads. And then we need to make a finding that the proposed activity is lawful under federal, state, and local law. We had someone propose a special event recently for something involving marijuana, which obviously is not legal under federal law, so that kind of brought this up. We have a standard now that says it's not adverse to the public interest, does not pose a significant risk to participants or spectators, and is not inconsistent with the size and capacity and function of the proposed location. So we oftentimes have people attempting to use facilities that are not suitable. We had someone asked to use a park that had no paved parking and had a substandard bridge which wasn't approved for vehicles, but yet they wanted to have a whole bunch of people launching SUPs from that, stand-up paddleboards from that location. So this leads to probably the most well, this is in the other ordinance as well. If we don't have an approved, if we don't have a fee for something, it means it's not something that we're going to allow to be rented with a special event permit or an exclusive use permit. So when the Parks Department comes forward with fees and charges, if they don't give you a fee for a certain park, it's not available for exclusive use, and it's not available for a special event. And that's something that's in this ordinance and in the later ordinance, 2019-12. Again, the tort claim limits are brought up to the current level. A little bit of clarification about vendors, that the coordinator needs to manage those people and make sure that they have all the required permits and insurances, to be a little more explicit in the ordinance than what we've actually been doing in practice. Again, location is got to be, ADA coordinator has to look at where people are setting up so that we don't have violations. Here in this ordinance, it clearly says you must possess an OTP pursuant to 504. Again, the 10% if you're on public property. If you have a special event and it's not on public property, it's on private property, no 10% concession. Okay, it's not public property, it doesn't matter. We already had provisions that you may have to put a deposit down if you're going to use one of our facilities, or if you're going to incur overtime for police, and so that's just highlighted. And there's an indemnification section as well. So with that, unless you have questions, I'd ask for approval of first reading.
Any questions, staff?
I have a question. Is there a preference, 10% for this particular ordinance, or a flat fee?
I believe this ordinance says this has the same language, 10%, and gives the option for the Parks Director to bring forward a flat fee as part of the fee resolution, and along with that, opportunity for public comment.
So it's an either-or for Parks, and the director
Yeah,
decides?
we're setting the 10% as the standard, but with the optional, we'll bring a resolution with a flat rate. Now, staff wasn't ready to come forward with a resolution this evening, but I told them ordinances take 30 days to become effective, so you got a little time, so.
Okay.
Other questions? I'd raise again the question whether there's anybody in the public that wishes to make comment on ordinance number 2019-10. Hearing and seeing none. Entertain a motion then for this ordinance.
Mr. Mayor, I'll move to approve, this is second reading?
First reading.
First reading for ordinance 209-10. There were no changes this time.
Correct.
No changes.
Second.
We have a second from Councilor Coos. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Hinton,
Yes. Excuse me, right, yes.
Hoagland,
Yes.
Coos,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Parsons,
Yes.
and Anderson.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Your Honor, Counsel, this is second reading of ordinance 2019-10, an ordinance of the City of Lincoln City amending the Lincoln City Municipal Code, Title 5, Business Taxes, Licenses, and Regulations, Chapter 516, Special Events, amending Section 516.025, Exempt Activities or Events, adding Section 516.040, Paragraph C, City Park and Facility Rental Rates, and amending Section 516.050, Permit Conditions. Ask for approval of second reading and adoption of the ordinance.
Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve second reading and adopt ordinance 2019-10.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Councilor Parson. We have a motion with a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Hoagland,
Yes.
Coos,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Parsons,
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
And Hinton.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Great. Thank you. Ordinance number 2017-11.
2019-11.
That's 2009.
And
Oh,
the
typo.
council communication does say 17. I
Yeah,
apologize. And I have people helping me proofread these things, too. So this is first reading of ordinance 2019-11, an ordinance of the City of Lincoln City amending Lincoln City Municipal Code, Chapter 813, Distressed Residential Property Registration, amending Section 813010, Definitions, Section 813030, Registration Information Required, Change in Ownership, Section 813070, City Notice of Noncompliance, Appeal, City Abatement, to change the department responsible for administration of the ordinance. By way of a staff report, ordinance 2019-11 essentially takes a task from the police department and assigns it to the finance department because the prior police chief wanted it and the current police chief doesn't. It's that simple. The other thing is that the city, when we first established this, and again, if you recall, there was a state law that required us to do this, to set up a registration for distressed properties, and we did do that. And at the time, we thought it would be a good idea to have a fee, and we had a $100 fee. Well, the ordinance said $100 or such other fee as the council may establish by resolution. And a year or two ago, the finance director came to you and asked to make the fee $0 so we could encourage people to actually register, and so you did that. So this just catches the ordinance up with the practice through the resolution. And in fact, the police chief had designated a person, it says police chief or designee, and the police chief had actually designated a person in the finance department to do this. But so we're not sending people to the police department and then having them send them over here. We're amending the ordinance. And while I was doing this, I checked all the citations and discovered that the statutes had been renumbered, so I corrected that. So if there's no questions, I'd ask for approval of first reading of ordinance 2019-11, and if, then I'll proceed with second reading if you're ready.
Sure. Motion?
I have a question.
Okay.
So does this does remove the fee, the $100 registration fee?
It's supposed to.
It removes it, but it places it so it can be added in by resolution.
Yes, and as you can see, the existing language was $100 or such other fee set by council resolution. The council's already set it at $0, but we're just getting rid of the $100 so people aren't asking, again, the planning department questions, which we got again this week. How much is the registration? So.
One of the reasons why we're trying to do this is that when we have a fee schedule and we're changing things by resolution, we try to tie that in with the budget. It's much easier to bring the changes together rather than trying to change an ordinance. And so anytime we see these, we're trying to establish them by resolution rather than by ordinance.
Just a comment. In some legal work I do have occasion to deliver foreclosure notices to, and I often end up at vacant properties, and I think it's really wise for the city to know where those are. And so if the fee discourages that registration, I guess I understand that. But those properties attract, I've seen this personally, they attract squatters, and I think they're often fire hazards. So I wonder if over some time, if after they're registered, if a fee or a penalty or something could be imposed. And I don't know that that would need to be in this ordinance, but I wonder if that's something to think about.
Well, we can, because it authorizes by resolution to adopt a fee, we can by resolution adopt a fee. So we've done that before where like in the first instance of a offense, it's a Class E violation, and then in the second instance, it's a Class C. So we can always have a fee for multiple years or things like that.
So, okay.
Yeah.
So, if there is a fee, is that paid by the property owner? I'm just,
Well, it's usually whoever owns the foreclosed property is typically a bank.
okay.
Councilor Mark, did that answer your question as far as?
Yeah,
So you're
that
looking
did.
down if a property may get registered, but down the road, I'm assuming, I guess my question is registration annual, or when would you have another chance to Councilor Mark's concern, if down the road, trouble with the property occurs, isn't that where you're going at? As it may be clean and everything right up front at registration, so you waive the fee, but then down the road, if it becomes a more of a nuisance, and this may not be the ordinance where that would apply, maybe it falls under a true nuisance code enforcement issue.
Well, obviously, our property maintenance ordinance works with this ordinance. So if there's issues, dilapidation or whatever, squatters, we can deal with that through the code
Through the
enforcement
code.
and the
Okay.
property maintenance ordinance.
And I think that would take care of it.
It looks like the residential property shall be registered in the event of an anticipated foreclosure, no later than the date first set for execution sale, a non-judicial foreclosure. Yeah, it doesn't look like it's annual.
Yeah.
So
But I think
if
the
you want to
answer-
impose a fee, you can always do it through the
Code, yeah.
through the
And,
resolution process.
So entertain a motion on ordinance 2019-11. Hearing none.
What's coming?
There'll be a motion to approve first reading.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion to conduct and approve first reading of ordinance 2019-11.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Coos,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Parsons,
Yes.
Anderson,
Yes.
Hinton,
Yes.
and Hoagland.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Your Honor, Counsel, this is second reading of ordinance 2019-11, an ordinance of the City of Lincoln City amending Lincoln City Municipal Code, Chapter 813, Distressed Residential Property Registration, amending Section 813-010, Definitions, Section 813-030, Registration, Information Required, Change in Ownership, Section 813-070, City Notice of Noncompliance, Appeal, City Abatement, to change the department responsible for administration of the ordinance. Ask for approval of second reading and adoption of the ordinance.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion to approve second reading and adopt ordinance 2019-11.
I'll second.
We have a motion with a second from Councilor Coos. Roll call, please.
Anderson,
Yes.
Hinton,
Yes.
Hoagland,
Yes.
Coos,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
and Parsons.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Ordinance number 2019-12.
Your Honor, Counsel, this is first reading of ordinance 2019-12, an ordinance of the City of Lincoln City amending the Lincoln City Municipal Code, Title 12, Section, or Streets, Sidewalks, and Public Places, Chapter 1216, Park Use Regulations and Exclusive Use Permits, amending Section 1216-085, Free Use Permits and Fees Required. By way of a staff report, this ordinance, like the special event ordinance and the street vendors ordinance, seeks to clarify between the Parks Department, the Explore Lincoln City, and the Planning Department the responsibilities for these ordinances and how they work together. Again, in this ordinance, you'll see in the packet on page 54, It says, "Staff shall not accept an application for processing an exclusive use permit or special event permit for a park or city facility that does not have an established rental rate. Consult the latest fee schedule for available city parks and city facilities. It is the determination of the city council that such parks and facilities are not available for exclusive use and/or special events, except when such events are conducted by or through the city of Lincoln City." So you're making a decision that if you don't adopt a fee, it's not going to be available, unless you yourself decide that you want to do something. But you're not subject to most of these ordinances, so.
Mr. Mayor, I might point out that Canyon Park does not have a fee.
Like the other ordinance, I added has to be lawful under federal, state, and local law, not adverse to the public interest. This ordinance already had provisions in it about can't pose a significant risk to the public health, safety, welfare. We added to the participants and spectators. We made the insurance consistent with the Tort Claims Act. We addressed vendors. Basically the same 10% concession fee, and then the option flat rate established by resolution. With that, unless you have any questions, I'd ask for approval of first reading, and then we'll be back with resolution on the fees.
And for the motion, I'd like to ask the public if there's any comments on ordinance 2019-12 because of the fees. Seeing and hearing none. Entertain a motion.
Excuse me, could I ask a question? Just to clarify on the fees, this is another one that can be set by resolution, and it can be either flat or
Yes.
10%, and we would get some feedback from the,
The existing ordinance has the 10%. That's been in there since 2014. What we added is the option to, by resolution, set a flat fee.
okay. And we would do that for all locations, the same amount, or
Well,
would we
the
decide?
Parks will bring forward and give you an explanation as to
So
why.
the schedule could say different parks would be a different fee depending on the type.
And what facilities are there. Yeah.
Okay, just want to make sure.
Any other questions?
Yeah,
Councilor
and
Mark?
I'm just wondering, Mr. Chandler, could you explain, again, I know I read this somewhere, but the significance of Canyon Park not having a fee?
That's where we have exclusive special events by competing organizations.
So specifically, that would eliminate anyone from having a surfing competition permit at that location?
Without a fee being established, yes.
Correction. It has nothing to do with the surfing, because that's the ocean, but the ability to reserve the space. the
Yes,
park.
sir.
Yeah.
That's
Unless
correct.
it's a city event.
Right. Okay. Motion?
Oops, I had it. Mr. Mayor, I will move to approve first reading of ordinance 209-12.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion with a second. Roll call, please.
Hinton,
Yes,
Hoagland.
Yes.
Coos,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Parsons.
Yes.
And Anderson.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, Your Honor, Counsel, this is second reading of ordinance 2019-12, an ordinance of the City of Lincoln City amending Lincoln City Municipal Code, Title 12, Streets, Sidewalks, and Public Places, Chapter 1216, Park Use Regulations and Exclusive Use Permits, amending Section 1216-085, Free Use, Permits and Fees Required. Ask for approval of second reading and adoption of the ordinance.
Is there a motion?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion to approve second reading and adopt ordinance 2019-12.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
We have a second from Councilor Mark. All those in favor? Excuse me. Any further deliberation? Okay. Roll call, please.
Hoagland,
Yes.
Coos,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Parsons.
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
And Hinton.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much. Ordinance 2019-16.
Your Honor, Council, this is first reading of ordinance 2019-16, an ordinance of the City of Lincoln City amending ordinance 2012-14 to add the property located at 3834 South Schooner Creek Road to the surcharge for special water service located outside the city limits and outside the Lincoln City urban growth boundary. By way of a staff report, we had an application by Mr. and Mrs. Conklin, I believe, Conklin, to connect to water service. The ordinance allows us, but does not require us, to provide them water service. Providing them water service is a special service. In the past, the city had a water line in this location, and it was failing and leaking badly, as I recall. And the city was thinking about just abandoning the line, but there were several property owners on the line who asked the city not to do that. And because we could have let it go, we asked them to share in the cost of the repair. And so back in 2012, those owners agreed to add a surcharge to their bill. It's like $21 a month. Now it's escalated to like 23 something. And in order to be equitable, since this owner is coming in and taking advantage of that repair, we've asked this owner, as a condition of connection, to basically join in to that shared cost. So they have to pay like $1,500 or $1,600 to catch up to the others, and then they will be charged a $23 a month surcharge until the cost of that improvement is recovered. So by way of explanation, ask for approval of first reading of the ordinance, and if it's unanimous, I'll proceed with second.
Questions regarding ordinance?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
just to clarify here, we run the line past their property already. We're not extending the line, we're just hooking them up.
Well, they're responsible for their own service connection.
Okay.
Yeah. They have multiple lots, and actually I believe their home is on the other side of the river. So they own property on both sides. So they're responsible for getting it over there. They have a bridge which is not rated to allow a well drilling truck to drive over, which apparently is the issue.
Alrighty.
Other questions? Mr. Abicello, I guess just a kind of a checkoff. One, it's not normal for us to put services outside the city and certainly outside the urban growth boundary. When we do, and we have, I'm assuming, so the question is, does it have the same water rate as outside the city, which is a 200 plus?
Yes, it is an increased water rate. They are responsible to do everything that the ordinance requires. When you're outside the city, sign a consent to annexation and all those other requirements, pay the out-of-city rate. In addition, there is an applicable Oregon administrative rule which staff had looked at and felt that our existing ordinance met that administrative rule, so we're not really applying that rule because it's already been applied in our ordinance. So,
Okay. Good, thank you. Any other questions? Hearing none, entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I move to, let's see,
this is first reading.
yeah, approve the first read of ordinance 2019-16.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
We have from Councilor Mark a second. Motion with a second. Roll call, please.
Coos.
Yes.
Mark.
Yes.
Parsons.
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Hinton.
Yes.
And Hoagland.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Your Honor, Counsel, this is second reading of ordinance 2019-16, an ordinance of the City of Lincoln City amending ordinance 2012-14 to add the property located at 3834 South Schooner Creek Road to the surcharge for special water service located outside the city limits and outside the Lincoln City urban growth boundary. Ask for approval of second reading and adoption of the ordinance.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I'll move to approve the second reading and adoption of ordinance 2019-16.
I'll second.
We have a motion with a second from Councilor Hinton. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mark?
Yes.
Parsons?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Hinton?
Yes.
Hoagland?
Yes.
And Coos?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. And ordinance number 2019-18.
Your Honor, Counsel, this is first reading of ordinance 2019-18, an ordinance amending the Lincoln City Municipal Code, Title II, Administration and Personnel, Chapter 204, City Council, Section 204-180, Appendix Council Rules, Subsection 6, Council Staff Communication, adding a new paragraph 6.4, authorized use of city resources. Essentially, Council, a couple meetings back, had asked about being authorized to use the city website to give notice when counselors would be available. I wrote some language and you adopted an interim policy. Councilor Hinton at that meeting asked if I could just make it a little more positive. So I actually tried, and
You did a good
6.4 is the result. So if this meets your satisfaction, I'd ask that you approve first reading of ordinance 2019-18.
Councilor Hinton, would you please make that motion?
Oh, I would love to. May I have
Sure.
one
question.
comment, question first? Is that, thank you very much, City Attorney, for making the changes. It's very nice. I just had one other question, which is, we don't actually have a city phone, but we do have access to a city phone number that we use on our personal phones. And I don't know if that needed to be added as well, so we don't,
I think
I mean, it's not for,
it's support for city electronic devices and accounts, and so it says in accounts.
it's fine.
It's a Google
I just wanted
phone
to-
number, right, so that would be a Google account. They just canceled mine, so I don't know why. I guess I never used it.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's fine. So,
Great.
therefore, shall I
Yep.
make a motion? Okay, I'd like to make a motion to approve the first reading of ordinance 2019-18 in its perfected form.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second from Councilor Parson. Any further discussion? Roll call?
Anderson?
Yes.
Hinton?
Yes.
Hoagland?
Yes.
Coos?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
And Parsons?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Your Honor, Counsel, this is second reading of ordinance 2019-18, an ordinance amending the Lincoln City Municipal Code, Title II, Administration and Personnel, Chapter 204, City Council, Section 204-180, Appendix Council Rules, Subsection 6, Council Staff Communication, adding a new paragraph 6.4, authorized use of city resources. Ask for approval of second reading and adoption of the ordinance.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I move to approve ordinance number 2019-18 and for the second reading
And adopt the
and adopt.
the ordinance.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Hinton?
Yes.
Hoagland?
Yes.
Coos?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Parsons?
Yes.
And Anderson?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much. We have a resolution, Resolution 2019-5, a resolution, City of Lincoln City recognizing climate change awareness. As you may recall, this was brought forward, recommendation from the Audubon Society of Lincoln County, I believe, and Lincoln City. Okay. And they provided us with, the Lincoln County has done similar, as has Newport, and they're asking us to consider a resolution. Resolution's in front of you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I just had one question, and that's on the second page of this and the last word of the first paragraph, which the whole paragraph reads, we further urge residents and visitors to promote by example energy efficiency, a healthy environment, and a sustainable economy to address the serious impacts facing our, and the last word is globe in here, but when I hear the word globe, I think of some, like the one I look at a map on, and so I would just suggest that we change it either to planet or Earth. Looking for help.
Any objections from council or
To change it?
to change it
No.
to Earth or
Planet?
planet?
Which planet?
Which planet?
Planet
Our
Earth.
planet.
Okay, our planet Earth.
Yours might be different.
How about go with our planet? you
Yeah.
know, Not their planet, but ours.
Our planet.
Is that by consensus all right to amend? All right. On planet, yep. Any questions, discussion?
Or to argue with it.
Yeah, I think the important thing here is that we agree to certainly encourage our citizenry to educate themselves and then take action as they deem, but the key being educate themselves, and we'll point them to opportunities. With that, I'd entertain a motion then to approve Resolution 2019-05 as amended.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I move to approve Resolution 2019-05 as amended.
I'll second.
We have a motion with a second from Councilor Parson. Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Hoagland.
Yes.
Coos.
Yes.
Mark.
Yes?
Parsons.
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
And Hinton.
Yep.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Hey, Kathy, do you have the contact information for the people who brought this to us that we could, once signed, forward it to them that we've taken action? Thank you. All right. Moving on, we have special order of business. We have some appointments to committees. Councilors, look like you've been busy. This should help some committees. Councilor Hinton, did you have, you had Mitch. Can you share with us?
Let me see.
Oh, you had Mitch?
This guy had.
Oh, gee, that's,
Now I'm on the spot. So Mayor Anderson and I interviewed Mitch Gold and found him interesting and suitable for, this is the Sustainability Committee. We did have some questions about the function of the Sustainability Committee, and I think that's open to discussion, and which has apparently been on hiatus for some time, but we're wondering about a way to reactivate it.
yeah. And I think, in addition to that, Mr. Chandler has redirected who we understand now who will be oversight and got direction, so
Had some questions there.
I think we just need the rest of the committee to be filled. But I would agree with you on the sustainability has a lot of options, and Mitch fit very well. I too would make the recommendation.
Do we?
Go ahead.
Okay, then I will move to appoint Mitch Gould to the Sustainability Committee for a city resident position with a partial term expiring October 7th, 2021.
All right.
21.
Is there a second
Second.
from Councilor Riley Hoagland? Any discussion, further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, thank you. And how about the next one, Councilor Mark?
Likewise, Catherine Shanti Ariel. I have to say, Mayor Anderson and I interviewed 3 people, and I think I was impressed by their enthusiasm and their, it seems like there were quite a few people who had been in town for about 2 years and decided they really wanted to start getting more involved in the city. It sort of felt like I had a similar experience, I guess. And very enthusiastic, intelligent. Seems like they have a lot to offer. It was true of Mitch and as Catherine. So I would. Should I go ahead and make a motion, or I move to appoint Catherine Shanti Ariel to the Sustainability Committee for a city resident position with a partial term expiring October 7, 2021.
Second. We have a second from Councilor Parson. Any other discussion or questions? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed with a no? Hearing none? Great. All right, I think you're on a roll, Councilor Mark.
Yeah, although there's one coming up that, well, okay, this next one.
I
Yeah.
saw it too.
Help me, Mr. Mayor, with this fellow's name, because it was
Well, we go
Robert Vincent.
Robert Vincent.
Robert Vincent, yeah, and I think his name's really, the last name was really the Italian, difficult to pronounce
Yes.
Italian name, and he just went with Vincent. Interested in the, I thought this was the VC, what committee is this?
This is Park.
Oh, it is VCC, okay.
He's on here
No,
for
it
2.
says
What- yeah, he's-
Parks.
It says Parks and Recreation
Parks and Rec,
Board.
and
And-
then Visitor Convention.
On both.
That's both,
We get 'em
okay. That
twice.
had me confused.
You get them twice.
Robert also enthusiastic and quite a bit of interesting background with work he had done in Burbank, and he had this kind of Hollywood vibe to him. So I would move to appoint Robert Ayadavea Vincent to the Parks and Recreation Board for a city resident position with a partial term expiring December 31st, 2021.
Is there a second?
Second.
We're second from Councilor Hinton. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
No if opposed. Okay.
Okay, that was Parks and Rec, and then the next one is
Yep.
VCC. Can I just go ahead and make that motion?
Yep.
I move to appoint Robert Ayadavea Vincent to the Visitor and Convention Committee to position 6, city resident LCSD North position with a partial term expiring November 5, 2021.
Second.
We have a motion and a second from Councilor Hinton. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed with a no? Hearing none. I might point out that Robert, you can tell, is an overachiever, but he wants to be involved, so, that was great. Moving on, another appointment. Now, this one's got to be,
I did this
Hinton.
one.
take it away.
All right, if I can catch my breath here. The next person is Brian Nichols for the VCC, and I interviewed him, and Mayor Anderson also interviewed him, and he was full of beans. I mean, he's got a lot of ideas, and I think he would be a big boost to the committee. He has 2 businesses right now, so he's another go-getter. He has a brick and mortar, and he also manages music coming to different venues in the city. So I think he would be a great asset to the committee. So I move to appoint, let me find his term. I move to appoint Brian Nichols to the Visitor and Convention Committee to position 4. This is the owner manager of a business with a partial term expiring November 5th, 2021.
Second.
Councilor Parsons with the second. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed with a no? Hearing none?
Okay, shall I go again?
Yep.
Okay. The mayor and I also interviewed Lisa Stutzman for the city resident UGB position on the Driftwood Public Library Board. She's another one that is just, she's always in the library anyway, she said, and she has some ideas about bringing some homeschooling materials into the library, and I think that would be a big asset to the library that's already has a lot of good things going on. So I would move to appoint Lisa Stutzman to the Driftwood Public Library Board to a city resident UGB position with a partial term expiring June 30th, 2019.
Second.
We have a second from Councilor Mark. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the appointment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed with a no? Hearing none. Thank you very much. I'll forewarn the councilors that I'm going to be saying no on the next time I get calls for these interviews, just so, so it can move down the list, and you guys could have an opportunity.
Mr. Mayor, I got
Yes.
a question about do we tell the applicant when we're going to be up here deciding whether, it seems like sometimes it's 3 months ago they applied or not, and it'd be nice to occasionally see some of these people.
I think there's, well, the way I've answered it, no, since the interview, because we don't know typically when we'll be here. I wonder, Ron, do you know if we notify applicant as they get onto the agenda?
That they're going to be on the agenda?
They're going to be on.
Kathy, do we do that?
Generally, we try to let them know about when. I mean, they're usually contacting us going, when am I going to get approved? And not, I don't know if it's always, but we try to let them know so that they have an opportunity to come if you have any questions.
Thank you. All right, we have another number 17, application for recognition as a representative of the news media. And thank you. We move to this. Went past the appointments.
Page 106.
17. There's, this is Justin Warner of the Lincoln City homepage has made application to be a recognized as representative of news media.
Mr. Warner's wondering if he should approach the...
Oh, why don't you wait for a second? I guess the question would be of council to go through this process, because as you've read the process, and it would be one that council would make a decision, hear testimony, review the application. One of the things that I would ask us, as far as clearing ourselves of bias, and I guess the question I'd have us all consider is, rather than having this hearing or testimony, to appoint a hearing officer, someone outside ourselves to take that role, and I guess it'd be report back to us with the decision. Mr. Appicello?
Just to be clear, is that the governing body will make the decision.
Right.
But the hearings officer process would be, you would hire a hearings officer to conduct a hearing, to hear from Justin what evidence he has. Staff would give evidence if requested. And then the hearings officer would conduct the hearing, ask the questions, and then prepare for you a recommended order, either approving or denying, and writing it up with his reasons why. And then it would be presented to you as the governing body to decide if you will accept or reject that. So it takes, and the reason why the mayor mentions bias, and it's one of the methods that is used to avoid allegations that you've prejudged an application. You have a professional conduct the hearing and then present it to you and for to accept or not. In addition, of course, I'd recommend you make affirmative statements of impartiality, but you wouldn't do that until we got to the point where you're making a decision. I recommend that you appoint a hearings officer, or have the actually just delegate to the city manager to appoint a hearings officer. You guys wouldn't choose who it would be.
And I think to add to the history, 4 of us out of the 7 have history with Mr. Warner, and depending on the decision, could easily be construed as having bias. And I think it puts us in a more favorable position, and him, to avoid that conflict.
And if you recall what you adopted when you adopted your form, the instructions for the form said we would not hold an executive session while we had an application pending. So we don't have an executive session scheduled, nor would we schedule one until we had this resolved. So I did, I talked to the manager about, we can get somebody fairly quickly, and it's not that we're going to need it because we don't actually have anything scheduled, but we can get it done fairly quickly.
Okay. Thoughts?
Mr. Mayor, I'm just wondering about the logistics of how do we find that person, how long, when would the hearing be held? It seems like Mr. Werner's done what he needs to do to meet the requirements, so I wouldn't want to hold him up longer than necessary.
I have used someone in this case, and there's 2 or 3 that the city is aware of that it has in the past, and it was very, very successful, very helpful to have that outside group. And so my guess is that we could easily have this back before you, probably in 2 meetings, so the first meeting of April.
Yeah, I got an estimate of a couple weeks, and they were, just in just the first phone call I made. So yeah, that's not a big deal. So.
And again, I appreciate the concern. Again, that's why the city attorney indicated that there wasn't any executive session scheduled. That's really what this allows with this kind of recognition. Other questions or thoughts?
I don't really. What's the cost associated with this?
I don't know what the bill was last time we used the hearings officer. I think maybe 600.
We're going to make the decision anyway.
I would just.
Do you know what I mean? We're going to, and then what's the question format that's going to be presented? Is it this? Is it? I understand the reason why to do it. The questions that will be asked to determine whatever it is it going to be our application, which he's already answered, and then individually, how do we determine based on that? We're only making this decision on what is presented, correct?
Well, that's part of the issue, is that we stated that we want to provide due process, a full and fair opportunity to be heard. Right. We have an application. The hearings officer will probably ask for more information, or, which a person is free not to provide any more information if they don't want to.
Right.
But the questions would be asked by the hearings officer. If they don't want to answer them, that's fine. If he wants to take into account additional evidence, there are issues like, do you want to take judicial notice of the staff report that was written by the OGEC staff or not? Do you want to decide that, or do you want a hearings officer to decide that? That's the kind of thing that probably you guys don't do on a regular basis, right. Which if you farmed it out, he would do that and then present to you a proposed decision. which you can reject or accept.
Right. Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion.
Okay.
I'd like to recommend to staff to appoint a hearing officer to conduct a hearing, review the evidence, and prepare a recommended order for council's consideration.
I'll second that.
We have a motion with a second from Mr. Mark, Councilor Mark. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed with a nay?
Nay.
Could we have a roll call, please?
Anderson,
Yes.
Hinton,
Yes?
Hoagland,
Yes.
Coos,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
and Parsons.
No.
Motion passes. So, hire a hearings officer. Thank you.
Thank you.
We then have wastewater dewatering equipment purchase.
Oh, sure. Do you want me to start?
So tonight, we're asking for you to authorize purchase of equipment for the wastewater treatment plant. We are working on our biosolids removal. Last year, or a couple years ago, I guess, we bought one dewatering facility. Now we need a second for backup. We take that one offline even for maintenance. We're really using it about 32 to 36 hours a week. This unit was the request to look into purchasing this equipment was approved by the budget in the amount of $500,000. That's what we estimated it would cost. What we did is we worked with a consultant. We reviewed several manufacturers. There aren't a whole lot, but we looked at the ones that would fit. And we're recommending through Sole Source, because this was the only one we're recommending, that we go ahead and approve this purchase for the FKC Company Limited screw press. The amount of the equipment is $312,000 to $312,250. $312,250. Thank you. And so the remaining balance, we will come back to you later in a couple weeks, probably a couple of meetings, and ask for a contract to install the equipment. But right now, we're just asking to purchase the equipment, get it ordered, and it'll be 12 to 24 weeks, I don't know yet, for delivery.
The cost, which we're estimating the total cost to be $500,000, would be within budget and would be essentially the same cost that we paid for the first centrifuge. There's really a couple of purposes in this. The first is, as Stephanie explained, is a backup, or to become a second one if we ever reach that point of producing that much sludge. But also is to dredge our two lagoons that we have. We've estimated that will probably take about 3 to 5 years to complete that. And then as that is dried out and goes through the screw press, that will be taken to the landfill.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
So, thanks. I know you're excited. That's why you're over there and not over here. And I'm all for it. Believe me, I'm all for treating this and dewatering it as much as we can. Just so that I'm clear, in the beginning we were renting a dewatering screw, or we were paying a service to have them.
No.
Because we didn't own this.
Prior to the centrifuge we have now, we only dewatered it to the point of 3%. So 97% of it was water, and we applied it on farmers' fields.
Right.
The
Okay.
new centrifuge we installed 2 years ago, I
Yeah.
think it was.
So this is the second one, as you're saying, a backup, a redundancy. but also thirdly, and probably more importantly, is to treat the sludge ponds, right? So yes, and more immediately, can we run them concurrently?
Yes.
Will we be running them concurrently?
Well, we still don't have a way to dredge the lagoons. We would need to purchase or rent an actual dredge to get that water that,
You want some shovels?
well, it's goop, it has. it
Shovels
lit-
were
it-
okay, volunteers not so much.
No,
You got
you
your
need a
first.
dredge, you need to pump it. It's still very
Right.
liquidy.
But yes, we will, the intent is that we would be running both of those, and as we get into next year's budget, that's when we really kick it into gear with cleaning out the lagoon.
When was the last time we added whatever we put into the ponds?
Oh, about 2 years ago when we,
So
as
we
soon
really
as-
haven't, since we have the centrifuge, we have not been adding to those ponds. One, because we can't, but two, that we haven't. So I'm just trying to see, yes, it's under budget and everything like that, but if we haven't been doing anything to it and we still need more equipment to be able to do the bigger picture, remove what's in the ponds, what is that cost associated in addition to, if we're $200,000 below the $500,000 bid amount, what would it take to actually do both of them at the same time to do what we want to do? Because yes, it's a part and we'll be able to use it in the event, but also what is that?
The biggest cost associated with running the second one will be actually the tipping fees that you pay the landfill. Of course, there's costs, there's electric costs to run it, there's the maintenance cost, but the biggest cost will be the tipping fees.
Well, sure, we have to put it somewhere, but I'm just saying, if we get more equipment, so we have 2 centrifuges and we'll have 2 watering screws, but we're not running both of them at the same time, and we're not getting into the pits, which is what we want to do and get all that stuff out. So yes and yes and yes, but now also, what is that next thing that we need to do that? If we're under $200,000,
Well,
why aren't we getting that other next step?
So part of this 200 that's remaining will go to hire a contract to install this equipment, because this is just going to come.
Sure, it's
Yeah.
off a crate.
So really, that will probably use most of that budget remaining.
That.
However, the next step then to empty the lagoons is to purchase a dredge.
Do you have those conveyor belts from the coal mills?
No, it'll be like a boat with a pump on it that'll be out
I'm
there.
trying to help you, Stephanie. I want those things empty.
I know, we do too.
All
And
right.
but we are getting completely set up for that.
All right,
And so
all
I
right.
believe in the next cycle, we will be asking for
Great.
dredge.
Thank you.
So, and I guess to clarify, next cycle is the budgets that's
Exactly.
coming up. Okay,
Exactly.
next budget cycle. All right.
So, and just to be clear, during the Budget Committee process, we approved $500,000 for what was described as a second centrifuge. This is what we're talking about? It's the
No.
same
It's
device, basically?
It's a little bit different.
Okay.
And you can explain a little bit difference.
They operate differently. They both do the same thing. They both dewater the sludge to about 18%, 20%.
We aren't getting a second centrifuge plus a dewatering screw
No,
press.
this is instead of a centrifuge. Yeah, but it's, again, similar process, same result.
So we don't have a second centrifuge?
No,
Didn't last budget cycle, we thought we did that last year?
Well, we approved the cost of purchasing one, and so that's
This
what
was
we're doing now.
500,000?
So what we're requesting is the screw press instead of the centrifuge.
the centrifuge wouldn't fit. We didn't have a lot of money. We had this building with a thickener that once we got this new centrifuge, we were comfortable taking that thickener offline. And so the centrifuges were too large to fit into this building, so the screw press is smaller unit, but it does the same thing. A centrifuge operates almost like a washing machine spin cycle, and this screw press is more like I don't know.
The meat grinder.
Exactly,
Right.
yeah, and then the water squeezes out that way.
And then you treat the water.
Yes, we put the water back through the plant.
Any other questions? All right.
Well, make a motion, yeah. Make a motion to approve the award purchase of FKC Company Ltd. in the amount of $312,250, subject to no protest being received. I don't know.
Second.
So we have a motion with a second from Councilor Hinton. Any discussion, further discussion? Roll call, please.
Anderson,
Yes.
Hinton,
Yes.
Hoagland.
Yes.
Coos.
Yes.
Mark.
Yes.
And Parsons.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Great, thank you.
I love the creativity with this, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, however we can do it.
Stephanie, now, if I can, still on the lagoons, once emptied, those, the intent is to keep them as lagoons for spillage, because that would be where we could then, if we ever had to, spill into.
From the plant,
Right,
yes.
from the plant.
Yes, it would be for emergency purposes.
So no longer would it be at Nelscott Pump Station or,
Well,
Subject, yes, but subject to some improvements we still need to make, and then especially subject to the I&I, the infiltration problems. You're still coming down to all the sludge is still, or sewage is still coming to a certain point. There are some improvements we do need to make on some other pipes, particularly up High School Drive. And then, of course, always subject to us staying on top of how much water gets into the system.
okay. Okay, thank you. Next item is a traffic calming presentation.
So in 2012, the city adopted a walking and biking plan, which essentially divided all streets into 4 different categories. Highway 101, high-use local streets, which are streets that have a traffic volume of between 2,000 to 10,000 vehicles per day. Medium-use streets, which are 5,000 to 2,000 cars each day, primarily residential areas, and then low-use streets, which are under 500 vehicles per day. The document broke the city out into 3 sections, and I've put those up here. You've got the northern Lincoln City section. The areas that you see in the yellow streets, those are the high impact, or the high use streets. The green is the medium use, and then the blue would be the low use. Okay. This is the second, this is the central section of Lincoln City, and then this is the southern Lincoln City section as it pertains to the road. And of course, the red one is Highway 101. To just give you an example of the high-use streets, in the northern section, there's 13 different streets that are the high use, and about 8 in the central section, and 4 in the southern section. Now, over the last little while, we have been using the radar speed limit signs that we have, and we've put those out in 20 locations. Some were just on this one side of the street, some were on both sides of the street. And of those, 13 of those were in the high-use street designations. 7 were in the medium-use street designation. That's significant because as we look at traffic calming features, the areas where we would want to begin emphasizing is the high-use areas. And so the fact that we were able to really focus on those has been helpful. All the speed limits but one were 25 miles per hour or less. The one 20 to 25 miles per hour. The one that wasn't was actually a construction zone, which was 10 miles an hour. What was interesting that came out of those, let me show you a little bit of where they were. Why isn't that going down? For the northern location, the circles that you see in red were where we put the speed signs, okay? Those are all in the high designated areas. The one area that you see in blue is in the medium use area. Again, this is the central section. You can see that we had a fairly even mixture of the high use streets and the centrally used streets. And then finally, we had two locations, both on Coast Drive, for the southern section, and those are the medium use section. We found some interesting statistics as we looked at those. First of all, there's some conclusions that we drew from looking at these statistics. Now, there's also some limitations on these radar signs. They weren't there for a long period of time. They were there for a short period of time, less than a month, which means you got a picture of that time for that time. You don't have it over the course of, say, 6 months or a year. You can't even say it was during the tourist season or during the off-season. It was just that time, so that's a limitation that there is. The other thing that was interesting about it is that in the high-use areas, well, in all the areas, people are not driving as fast as you think they are. But I think what people are seeing is not necessarily speed, but it's volume of traffic. It's a lot more traffic. And but here's what we found. Of the 20 locations where we had this, 18 of those were of the 85th percentile were less than 5 miles an hour over the speed limit. So in other words, 85% of them were less than 5 miles or at or under the speed limit. Of the two that were not, the construction zone, which was on West Devils Lake Road, the 85th percentile was 30.66 miles per hour in a 10 mile per hour speed limit. And on Northeast 14th Street in the 85th percentile, it was 31.01 miles per hour for the 85th percentile. That still means you've got 15% that are going faster than 5 miles per hour over the speed limit. What we found of that 15%, of those that were less than half as much. So if you're talking about 25 miles an hour, this would be less than 38 miles per hour, was 20%. Those that were between half as much and twice, so between 38 to 50, were 60%, and those that would have been above 50 miles per hour were 20%, more than twice as much. The highest speed we found was 73 miles an hour, and that was on East Devils Lake Road. The lowest we found was 5 miles an hour. Okay. So again, one of the conclusions that we came is that even though you still have 15% of your population, your cars, and so if you're talking 10,000, you're talking 1,500 cars per day that would be going over 5 miles per hour over the speed limit. But again, I think what you're really seeing is volume more than you are speeding, although the speeding is there. So from that, we began looking at the different types of traffic calming features, beginning with what is recommended in the walking and biking plan. Most of the things that are called for in the walking and biking plan are very expensive. They are sidewalks, and ultimately that is one of your best defenses that you have against speed is sidewalks. And so you can look at the high traffic areas over a long-term period as being places where you really should look to put sidewalks. The other ones that we looked at are speed humps. If you look on page 115, packet page 115 of your packet, you generally put speed humps in series of at least 3 in order to really establish that you're slowing down traffic. Humps have to be, you have to be able to allow the traffic to go over at the speed limit. We looked at two styles. One, we looked at permanent. Those are asphalted ones. We also looked at ones that are rubber. And there's three different types that we looked at on those. Generally, on the cost of those is between $4,000 to $6,000 per hump. Okay, so you're looking at about $12,000 to $18,000 for one section of street. Speed cushions on page 116, they're similar in price. You can see that they have a gap that goes between them. And again, you're generally going to purchase those in batches of 3 to really make them effective, 3 or more. They also have speed tables. These are similar to speed humps, except they're wider. They're essentially, the top of it is the width of a car. Or I'm sorry, its width is the length of the car. And those are also about $4,000. Then they also have, for some intersections, speed rounds. Those are more like your roundabouts, except they're made of rubber. And they're all put down with bolts to knock them down into the ground. Those ones, those were about $1,400 per round. We also looked at radar signs. Should we purchase more radar signs? One of the interesting statistics that we found was that the radar signs show both the speed at different times before you pass it. So it clocks it and will tell you if the vehicles are actually slowing down. We're finding that that is a very effective manner of slowing traffic. Is that having that pop up and say 25 miles an hour has the side effect of not only showing you how fast you're going, but it also causes people to slow down. And the cost of those are about the same cost as a speed hump, about $4,000. Now, if the city were to pursue that, I would recommend that we spend about another $2,000 for each one and get them so that and buy the ones that have cameras in them. If someday you felt like you wanted to issue tickets by photograph, you would already have the equipment there. If not, you still have that capability in the future.
Mr.
Again,
Mayor.
those are about $4,200, $6,000, and it's important to note that those are for solar-powered signs. So we avoid the electric cost, the electric hookup costs.
Yes, sir?
Isn't it true that in Oregon you have to have a manned speed detection in order to issue tickets?
I don't
And it has
know.
to be reviewed? Well,
I don't know. We have not looked at that. I have not looked at that enough, so I couldn't tell you.
I don't know, yeah. I did, and I believe it has to be manned and reviewed or something to that effect, so. But anyway, so, not to just say, hey, here's a ticket from the mail, you know.
The other things that we looked at that are found on packet page 120 are solar-powered stop signs, which are about $1,000 a sign, and solar-powered speed limit signs, which are about $900 a sign. So we wanted to bring this to you. We know that we're going to be including some traffic calming parts into next year's budget. But we wanted to bring this so that you had a chance to look at it. If there's any questions that you have now or in the future, you could contact me or Lila or Stephanie, and we'd be happy to answer those questions.
Questions, council?
Is ODOT in charge of what painted crosswalks we put across the highway?
Anything that goes on 101 requires ODOT's approval.
Do we have any crosswalk striping not across the highway?
We have a lot that we would put, yes.
We do currently have crosswalk striping that is not on the highway. Now, does that, if it's Southeast 9th going north and south, you know, that's what we could do on whatever side streets.
Yes.
And what,
To that
pro-
one.
what, I mean, they look great. I mean, they look, colorful and modern and wonderful, and we could put octopi all over them. So that's great. And all right, I'll wait.
Striping is a relatively inexpensive way of dealing with things. Don't know how effective they are. I do like the 3D look of the one. Just wondered how many rear-end accidents there would be caused if people saw that.
Or they say slow at an angle or something. What, I see traffic calming, and part of this, and I was just looking at the first two pictures, and I thought it was a before and after, and it wasn't. But it brought me to believe, who is in charge of monitoring the overgrowth from properties in the easement area alongside sidewalks and streets? And the reason why I ask is there a way to get on that to make sure that it isn't over the case? Because if you have grass and bushes over whatever that space is called, the easement area or that right of way, you're not being the right of way. Thank you. You can't walk there. And so if there was an initiative to really get on that, to allow those spaces to be used and striped properly, then that could say, hey, if there's a volunteer association, I'll go, give me a shovel, I'll cut it and put it in a bag. You know what I mean? Because it is important to have that opportunity. And I know of many places where your vision is blocked and you can't walk and things like that. So where does that occur?
That would be street maintenance.
So.
And, you bring up an interesting point on a couple of things. By allowing it to go into the right-of-way. People
could see it in those
build
two
or
pictures.
landscape out into the right-of-way. You're pushing people into the street that are walking. That's a natural thing to happen when there isn't a sidewalk or something else to do that.
Absolutely.
Now, as we look at sidewalks, and one of the ideas that we have actually been working on someday with Logan Road is that rather than using the idea of a curb and cement sidewalks, is to consider the idea of more of a trail style, which is asphalt. Much cheaper to install, has a different look to it, allows for drainage to still be used off the road. Now, there is a real advantage that the city has in traffic calming, and that is, whether it's real or an illusion, it is narrower streets. When it feels or is narrow, people will generally slow down their traffic. The wider the streets are, or even the wider you're made to feel it is, the faster people will go. So many of our streets fit that category of being a narrow street.
If the Otter Rock Loop recently did an asphalt walk along the west side of it, and it is very much used, and you're not having to walk in the dirt and things like that. So it promotes walking. It has a safe space, and I don't know how much our right of way is into properties, but and ADA compliancy and all that other things, but just trying.
Councilor Hidden?
I just want to go back to the striping on the street, because on Logan Road, although that's a county road, I know that these painted crosswalks weren't there for years and years, and then they were there and people slowed down at them. So they've been effective there. And I would encourage the path ideas on Logan, because it's a scary place, and cars do. The other thing that might slow, I'm on particular Logan Road because I'm most familiar with that, is there's a double striped or a yellow line, and doesn't have the spaces in between. People don't know that they can go over there. I was almost hit not too long ago because the person didn't know they could go into the other lane to go around me, and I was walking on the
Because it was a double,
I'm sure
a solid
there's
stripe line.
There's
I
no
see.
other reason, because an oncoming car wasn't coming. So So something to think
Good
about.
observation.
Councilor Mark?
Yeah, well, two thoughts. And well, first of all, I asked the chief not so long ago about a place that had very high bushes that were blocking at the intersection. He said just send him an email or send the police department an email. So that's one way to just get some action on that. So I was curious about how sidewalks slow traffic down. Is it because it narrows the street?
It does.
Okay.
Any, you all right? Stephanie or Ron, the question I had when I saw this was, we've been, numerous citizens have been coming forth and identifying streets that are of issue or concern to them, and I couldn't find a list. Did we notify them about this presentation tonight? And if not, could we? So they could,
I don't know if we notified them or not, but if we didn't, we could.
just to let them know that we haven't forgotten their concern. The other thing I have is, I'd be curious of the streets they have identified or where they line up on this map. You know, if they're the high volume ones that,
Okay. Some of the places where we put the radar signs were complaint driven.
Yes.
And some of them were based upon these maps. But I'll go back and see if we can identify those.
to see. 'Cause I think that's real good data here. We heard it from the chief before as his observation that oftentimes cars going by you feel like they're going a lot faster than they really are, and it's nice to have some data. But I agree with you, 15% of a big number is still a lot of cars going by me too fast. So what, help me then now understand the process. Is this then a budget process? Is that where we'll see it next?
There's
or-
two processes that we'll go through. One is police enforcement. One of the things I've discussed with our chief is that now that we're fully staffed, we can spend more time doing some traffic enforcement and speed enforcement. That is, in the end, that is the best tool to use. So that is going forward. The other is we look at street calming devices. It really does become a budgeting question. And again, perhaps the best calming feature is a sidewalk, the narrowing part, but it also gets pedestrians off the road. However, that's the most expensive thing to do. And so we are looking in our budget to include some of these features, probably the radar features, to put into next year's budget. And it would be with the intent that they would go up in an area for a longer period of time, several months probably, and then rotate it to a different, rather than rotating it monthly or every 3 weeks.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
The radar detectors in Salishan, are those ours?
Down in Salishan? No.
Okay. They have two inside. I didn't know if they were ours.
Other questions, concerns?
We put one right in front of Councilor Cruz's house? I think that's
Up over the hill?
Why don't we like watching them fly by?
Interestingly enough, we look to see, are people going faster going down a hill or faster going up a hill? And we found it to be about the same.
Huh. Interesting.
Just want to get that stomach to go whoop.
Get off the,
Yeah.
the ground.
Perfect.
All right, enough on street calming. We have a last piece of business, the member agency admission agreement, City of Salem and Lincoln City Police Department. So who is doing that piece of work?
I guess I'm doing that.
You let the chief go on vacation?
Ask our sergeant to come
Yeah, I
up
was
and
gonna
help
say.
if he would like to.
Get over here.
We do our records management called Priors with the City of Salem. They are installing a new system that's called the Mark 43. And what this agreement does is it allows us to continue to operate with them under their new equipment. The cost associated with this is $25,000, and we did budget for that.
Any questions from council?
Well,
If you ask specific questions on how it works, then we definitely
Yeah.
have to bring the sergeant up.
We'll get them up here.
This explanation takes up 70 pages of this 197-page packet, and I honestly didn't understand it. So I was wondering if there was maybe a better method to, and I certainly have no objection, but was this discussed during the budget committee process, or, you know, I mean, it feels like it was just sort of dropped in my lap, I guess is my concern.
If I recall, it was discussed. However, there was uncertainty as to whether or not it was going to go forward, and now it's going forward.
Did, if I may,
Yes.
did our IT director look at this and feel like it's the same?
He did.
Since we have their perfect rating, I would rather
He did
have
review
his
it.
approval. Okay. Thank you, Tony.
So, Counselor Mark, again, reference to the 70 pages, though I wouldn't expect you to be reading that or understand it either, because I'm with you. But what I guess, advice to staff, what would have helped, maybe something that referencing that had been,
Could this have been brought up in a work session or something, just something that has a little more
give you-
explanation? And maybe, I mean, if you say, oh, this improves our data collection, I'd go, oh, okay, it sounds like something we need, so.
Before and after, compare the two?
Yeah, I don't really have the answer, but I'm being asked to make a wise decision on something I don't really know anything about.
If you would like me to have the chief wait and have him come back in the next meeting, I'm happy to do that.
I think more for future references.
yeah, that's all I'm looking for, is, because I'm with Counselor Mark, 70 pages, I'm not going through the detail.
I might point out that when I look at these 70 pages, there's very little to do with the actual product and everything to do with lawyer language.
Right.
That's why.
That's how I felt.
I did not insist it be attached.
Counselor Parsons?
Maybe the city attorney could give us a report.
Good.
My question is, we're replacing the old agreement with this agreement?
Yes.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the member agency admission agreement between Mark 43, the City of Salem, Oregon, and the City of Lincoln City, Oregon.
Mr. Mayor, I'll second.
We have a motion to approve with a second from Counselor Parson. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Oh, how about a roll call? It's a budget item.
Hinton,
Yes.
Hoagland.
Yes.
Coos,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Parsons,
Yes.
and Anderson.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much. City manager reports, anything?
I just have one item. I'm sure all of you have been staying up with the legislature and with the League of Oregon Cities. There is one bill that is before them that has caught my interest. A few people have sent me a note about it. Senate Bill 621, which would prohibit cities from regulating vacation rental dwellings. And that is currently in committee. I'm not sure where it will go, but it's one that the league is opposing, and I think that knowing how everybody in our city feels about VRDs, it's one that everybody should take some interest in.
I believe the mayor spoke to that the other day.
I had the opportunity to testify in opposition to that piece of legislation in Salem. I was not so concerned about VRDs and wanted to instead make the point of the state usurping, what I thought usurping city responsibilities and home rule.
That is a second very good point.
So, but I would agree, the word I got from the sponsor was it wasn't going to go anywhere. But whenever you hear a work session or get a hearing, it's worth being there, so.
That's all I had, Mayor.
Work session, I saw we have a work session on Monday, the 18th at 5:30.
I had some material about 3/4 of the way ready to go, but I got hijacked by surfing, and so it's coming to you tomorrow.
70 pages, maybe? 'Cause-
No, not that many. And pictures.
Head pictures.
I like pictures.
City Attorney.
Two things. One, earlier this evening on ordinance 07, I said I couldn't find the OTP in Chapter 528. Well, I found it. So I assume you don't want it in there twice, so maybe unanimous consent. Kathy would, of course, correct any errors, and she would point this out to me, but if you're okay, unanimous consent, we don't have to add it twice.
I think we can agree that once is plenty. We don't have to overdo.
The second thing is I promised you I would post the sign ordinance today. I did not get it posted today. I hope to have it posted tomorrow. I have to go over it with Lindsay, and hopefully it'll be shorter rather than longer.
And again, for clarification, that was the portion that took care of the content out? Okay.
Yes, yeah, and I'm trying to separate the more controversial stuff and say, we can keep this or we can punt this to later, so you'll have a little discussion to have.
Okay, great. Any other, let's see, public comments? We lost our public, other than, the press and staff, but glad to have you.
Not your secretary?
That guy. Joe, he's like staff. Any other, or let's go to comments from councilors.
I just want to thank everybody for coming to my rescue during my coughing fit.
And you're on the mend. Please tell us you're on the mend and
I
not.
hope so,
not-
yeah. I've got all these candy now I have to give back, but,
Okay. Councilor Parson?
Just before our next city council on the 23rd, Councilor Coos' birthday, so happy early birthday.
Huh? And you're going to do radio later in March, Tuesday, and talk on the Teen Center on the 26th of March?
Awesome.
Great.
Wow.
How about this way? Councilor Hinton?
Okay, I have one thing. The League of Oregon City has its annual conference the 3 days of September 26th through the 28th. And the HR director, Colleen Scallion, and I have been selected to be on the planning committee for this conference. And so I'm asking any council members, or asking all council members, if you have any ideas of something that you would like to see covered at that annual conference. You can email me with your ideas and we can flush them out.
Okay.
Anything you're dying to know or talk about or explore?
All right. And is that it?
Yep.
Councilor Mark?
I am going to be out of town and returning mid-afternoon. Well, I might be late to the March 18 work session.
Okay. Councilor Mark, didn't you mention, or maybe it was Councilor Hinton, the small city, League of Cities?
That
small,
was me.
And why don't you bring that up and ask council?
I'll have to check on the day. So I attended League of Cities, what is it called, Small Cities?
Small cities,
Yeah, in Newport, which was interesting. There were not many. I was the only one from City of Lincoln City, a couple of people from Newport, Waldport, Yachats. I think that was it. But there are 3 more sessions scheduled this year, and it mostly went to, I guess I did mention this last time, kind of things that the cities could be doing, cooperating on and doing regionally. So I found it interesting and could be helpful. But there's another one scheduled in May, I forget where, and then August, I think Yahat said they would do it, and they were asking for someone to host the November session, and I didn't feel empowered to do that myself, but I wonder if we might want to.
May I ask you a question? I thought we already signed up for May. and that we were going to continue the ODOT conversation that we had had at the
Well, maybe I'm
previous-
wrong. Maybe we're signed up for May.
I don't know, maybe they forgot. I'm just,
Okay.
okay.
So, it raised the question for me, and procedure, Mr. Chandler, when an opportunity like this comes up, rather than quickly saying yes or no, what would be a proper way that we as counselors could approach you as to the feasibility of hosting, and I don't know what hosting means. Okay.
Just ask.
Okay, but just come, because I don't know if this includes a lunch or, dancing.
It does include lunch, but I didn't want to just do it
Right.
in the meeting, because who am I?
I can check on if they have us
Yeah.
for May or not, because that
Okay.
was a big discussion.
The last big event that we hosted was the mayor's conference. And that was Mayor Williams looking at it and saying, can we do this? And we said yes, and so we applied for it. So
This was time, there were maybe 10 people in the room.
Yeah,
It's usually about 20, so that was,
okay. Councilor Holdwood.
I would just like to say that we have a new Thai food place in town called M&P Thai Noodle. I haven't been there. I know they came from Newport. They're in the old Vivian's and Mr. Bill's Smoke. I always get it wrong, but Vivian's restaurant location. And just
That's great.
welcome them to Lincoln City, and
Yeah,
thanks.
all right. I didn't have anything. Kathy?
Usually for those region meetings, they work through me and ask if I want to host it, if we want to host it, and then we sign up. I'm not sure if we're listed. I was looking, but then I arrange for the lunch and do all the work on it. But usually they're always communicating with me, and then I communicate with you, like whether you want to go to those region meetings. But
Okay, thank you. That helps. All right. Stand adjourned. Please note it's before 10 o'clock and before 9 o'clock.
I'm impressed as long as.
That's the earliest one yet.
We're moving